to a world where politicians use the law to further their own personal agenda and defend those who work with them, God speaks. To a world where the law is applied unevenly, depending on where your place is in society, what color your skin is, what you believe, or how much money you have in your pocket, God speaks. To a world where there are so many different laws, we wonder sometimes which ones we're having to live with, God speaks. To a world where we grapple with the seeming conflict between the rule of law and the freedom of a person to protest, God speaks. God speaks through Moses, through Jesus. God speaks through you and I. That's what we're hearing this morning. Let me say that differently. That's what I hope we're hearing this morning. We're still in the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus is still talking. We're still in the Sermon on the Mount. We've entered what I have previously referred to as part 2. Let me just recap for you. Part 1 is, you are blessed, especially if you are someone who feels that you are the least to be blessed, and society says you're not. Yes, you are. You are blessed because you are you, just the way you are. You are blessed by God. Just who you are is a blessing. Live into that blessing by being salt and light. Salt that flavors the world around you, light that shines and shows others the way. Because that's the way to the fulfillment of who we're supposed to be. That's the way to the fulfillment of the law and the prophets, Jesus says. Moses puts that slightly differently. Choose life. Not the way that phrase has been co-opted in the 20th century, but the way Moses means it. Choose to live with God. Choose to live with the law and the prophets. Jesus is going to say this again, by the way, in about 15 chapters in Matthew. He's going to say, love the Lord your God and love your neighbor as yourself. On these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets. That's what you need. Love God, love your neighbor as yourself. So there's 3 pieces there, right? You have to love yourself. You have to love God, you have to love your neighbor, and you have to love yourself. Or let me phrase that a little bit differently. You are blessed by God. Be salt and light and share that blessing with your neighbors. Now let's talk about the law. Now that we've framed it, now that we've focused with the lens that Jesus gives in the Sermon on the Mount, in part 1, you are blessed, be salt and light, that's the fulfillment of the law. Let's talk about the law for a minute. Here's the point where I think we start to get into trouble. And here's the trouble. Earlier this week, I wrote this in my blog, and I referred to the law. And then I was asked, what do you mean by that? I mean, I know what you mean, but what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? When you say the law, what are you talking about? There's the confusion right there, isn't it? Because, especially since we're in church and I'm talking about Jesus, I must be talking about things like the 10 Commandments and whatever's in Deuteronomy and Leviticus. So when Jesus refers to the law and the prophets, he's obviously talking about some religious stuff, not, the law. We can separate them out, right? Because, there's a difference between love God and whether or not you should stop at a stop sign or you can turn right on red. They're different, right? That's what makes this so easy. The moment you go, yes, they are, and Jesus is talking about the Ten Commandments and the prophets and all that stuff that's in the Bible, the moment you do that, you just put it on the shelf and you can ignore it now. That's easy. Except when Jesus was talking to this crowd in the Sermon on the Mount, and he refers to the law and the prophets, they know that that's the law that governs their lives. The stuff the Romans do is just oppression. The law is what governs their lives. So, please, when you hear this, do not hear some sort of religious stuff that Jesus says or that Moses says early on. Don't worry about that. It's not the same. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Because the point of law should be to govern us in a way that allows us to live as a community, in a way that fulfills love your neighbor as yourself, in a way that allows us to live into our lives not just a commandment that says don't kill, but a commandment that really means give life, respect life, encourage life, do the things that are life-giving, not the things that are destructive. This is what Jesus is saying. I just told you, by the way, that you're blessed and that you're salt and light for the world, and that what I am teaching you in how you live that out. Remember, you don't earn blessing by living this way. You are blessed already, and you're sharing that. Here's how that's fulfilled. It's not about the letter of the law. It's not about the letter that says don't kill. It's about the heart that's at the heart of the law that means give life. Or, as Moses so eloquently put it early on in Deuteronomy, choose to live. Choose life. The law about adultery isn't about the letter of the law. It's about relationship. It's about how we connect with each other. It's about the breaking of relationship and what we might do to heal that. The part about oaths, why would you need to swear if you live into what you say? Why would you need to swear it? The moment you say you're going to do something, you would of course do it. If you are genuine and sincere, why would we need a law around oaths? Why would you need that? What's at the heart of the law? The heart of the law is building community. The heart of the law is how we connect with each other, how we build relationships, not just with individual people, but with peoples, with nature, with the environment, with the world around us, with everything that we connect with, everything that we are connected to, with God, creation, each other. That's what's at the heart of the law. So many of our laws, however you describe them, are so many of them are like rules in a game that say, don't do this. You can't do this. But then, as we heard earlier, we have consequences if you do. Don't do this because the consequence is you'll be punished. Our entire system of justice rests solely on retribution. Do something wrong, you'll be punished. Because, that's how we maintain law and order. Really? Well, actually, yes, I think the answer to that is yes, because we've grown into it. We've lived into that idea so fully that when Jesus says, it's not about that. It's about how you build relationships with others. It's about how you share the blessing that's you with the blessing that is the person sitting next to you. It's how you share the blessing that is you that somehow came into conflict with the blessing that is another person or another people or another part of creation. Instead of going, let's just smack that down quick, why not ask the question how that happened? Why not wonder why? Why not have some conversation about it? You don't make your enemy your friend by beating them. It's so interesting. I know I say this. I honestly cannot help myself. I have to take this opportunity because I always do. It's amusing to me that particularly with fundamentalist traditions and traditions the basis of whom their preaching is fear and how you will be punished if you don't do what I tell you, it's amazing to me that there aren't more pirates. Because clearly Jesus says, if your eye offends you, you should pluck it out, and if your hand offends you, you should cut it off. And there will not be a single day in which at some point that will happen. So why aren't there more people with hooks and eye patches? Seriously, why aren't there more people with hooks and eye patches? It clearly is spelled out in this passage in the Bible that that's what you should do. And if you believe in the literal letter of the Bible and the literal letter of the law, why haven't we done it? Is it because we're conveniently avoiding that? Yes, it is. It actually is that. Or is it because that's ridiculous? Why would you do that? In fact, that's so ridiculous that cannot possibly have been said by the Jesus that we know loves everyone. So maybe this is another one of those moments where you maybe want to wonder a little bit about, is it Jesus that's actually saying that? Or is Matthew saying it that way because he knows we'll understand that? Because, we understand the whole punishment retribution thing. Because that's what it is. And it's retribution on a ridiculous scale. Because we'd all be one-handed and have one eye. It's not about the letter of the law. It's about what's at the heart. And the heart of the law is community. The heart of the law is love. The heart of the law is how we engage each other, not break that. To live into the fulfillment of the law is to embrace the idea that started this whole Sermon on the Mount thing. You are blessed. So is the person sitting next to you. So is your enemy. So is the person who's not your neighbor yet. We're all blessed. And in fact, if you're somebody who society says definitely is not blessed, yes, you are. And as a society, we ought to be asking, why would we think that person isn't? Why would we value that person less? They are blessed, just like we are. Jesus' vision of the law is about restoration of relationship. It's about ways in which we might come to understand how we're connected and live into that, rather than find ways to overpower others or disconnect from them entirely. This may well also be one of those moments now that we all think to ourselves, well, that's not going to happen. That's too much. Can't do it. Maybe. But as I frequently like to remind people, Jesus didn't ask you to be perfect. Jesus never demanded that you live into any level of perfection other than the perfection which is simply you, just as you are. To live into the blessing that you are, and then to be salt and light to those around you. We need to work on this more. We need to be less quick to retribution and more willing to try to meet the challenge of restoration. It's hard work. It takes patience. It sometimes takes sacrifice. It takes a willingness to be like the servant that Jesus is to others, not just ourselves. It takes a willingness to embrace the idea that we are all blessed and we are all connected in a way that brings life, not destruction, but life. That's what's at the heart of the law. That's why the first thing that Jesus talks about, after he's framed it for you, you are blessed, be salt and light, this is a fulfillment of things. Here's how to live into that blessing. Let's start with the law. Because the law is about how we live together. It's not how we control each other. It's not how we can get what we want. It's not how we can punish others who don't do what we want. It's how we create community. It's how we restore the relationship that we all started with. We are blessed, and we are all children of God.